Good morning, my name is Andrew Clausen. I'm a student of the Translation and Interpretation Certificate at the University of California, San Diego Extension. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the history of Nicaragua between 1855 and 1979, talking a little bit about how the U.S. has had an interesting role in this history. So in the early 1850s, the Liberal Party, based in León here in Nicaragua, and the Conservative Party, based in Granada, were fighting it out for national power to see who would have the presidency and who would maintain power. In 1855, the Liberal Party invited an American named William Walker, who was known as a filibuster, to come down to Nicaragua to side with the Liberals and help them beat the Conservatives in this civil war. William Walker comes with about 57 men and helps the Liberals win. And after that, he doesn't leave the country, but he takes control of the country through a puppet president that he uses, based out of Granada. And then in 1856, he himself declares himself president of the country, and this presidency is recognized by the United States government. After a few years of this, he is run out of the country. The people did not like his pro-slavery initiatives and his ideas of creating a slave-holding empire in Central America. After he leaves, the liberals and conservatives continue fighting, and in 1909, a liberal president is overthrown by the United States, who puts in a conservative president. This liberal president was pushing for land reform and more national unity and more national identity and less influence by the United States. So in 1909, this new president is installed, but there begin to be rebellions against this president and this intervention. And so in 1912, the United States sends in the Marines, and the Marines will be there from 1912 to 1933, repressing various rebellions, fighting against people who are trying to fight for a national identity. And throughout this whole time, the U.S. is putting in presidents and changing presidents and fighting for free and transparent elections, but really is manipulating the situation all the time. In 1927, a man named Augusto Cesar Sandino begins a rebellion in a more organized way on a larger scale. He begins a guerrilla movement in the northern mountains of the country with some 300 men, and the Marines chase him for about 7 years and are never able to defeat him or capture him. And so his movement continues to grow as a nationalist movement. And in 1934, after 7 years of chasing Sandino and with the onset and the deepening of the U.S. Great Depression, the U.S. government decides that it can't be spending all this money and time and energy on these foreign interventions, and calls the Marines back to the United States, and they will not intervene again. In 1934, the Marines leave, and Sandino has won. But he is not in. He does not agree with the U.S. with the government that the U.S. has set up in Nicaragua. So they begin peace accords, and the leader of the Guardia Nacional, the National Guard in Nicaragua, is one Anastasio Somoza Garcia. He's the leader, and he is orchestrating these peace accords between Sandino and the national government. And in 1934. Sandino comes to Managua, the capital, to sign peace accords, to finally have peace and disband his army. And once the peace accords are signed, he is on his way back to the airport, and he and several of his commanding officers are arrested, executed, and buried in unmarked graves, all at Somoza's order. So Somoza then is the only power left. Even though he's commander of the National Guard, he's not the president, but he is running the country. And in 1936, he steps down as leader of the National Guard, runs for president, and wins by a landslide, obviously, through voter fraud. And in 1937, as president, he reclaims power of the National Guard as well, and begins a dictatorship. During these early years of his presidency and time, it's reported that the U.S. supports him, and that it's allegedly said that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that he is a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. So that kind of can give you an idea of the relationship that that the two countries have. He was very repressive of the people. He did not provide education or access to health care, did not invest in infrastructure. And in 1956, he was assassinated by one Rigoberto López Pérez, who was also killed. After that, instead of ending the dynasty or the dictatorship, his eldest son, Luis Anastasio Somoza, takes over power and runs the country as a dictatorship from 1956 to 1967. And then he dies of a heart attack at age 44 in 1967, and his younger brother, Anastasio Somoza de Baile, takes over and will be president or dictator of the country from 1967 to 1979. So with the assassination of the first Somoza, an insurrection movement is begun, and along with the revolution in Cuba, movements for nationalism and independence from U.S. Interests begin to take shape in Nicaragua, as in many other Central American countries. Many young Nicaraguans go to Cuba in the early and mid-60s to train for guerrilla tactics and socialism ideologies. During this time, in the mid-60s, the Frente Sandinista de Libertad Nacional, or the FSLN, is born, and this is an independence movement, a socialist independence movement formed using Augusto Cesar Sandino as a figurehead, somebody who claimed free and national interests. In 1972, then, under the reign of Somoza de Baile, there's a massive earthquake in Managua that kills over 5,000 people and completely devastates the country. As aid money flows in, a lot of that aid money is pocketed by the dictator and does not get back to the people or to the infrastructure. And so the city is never rebuilt, and the people who are destitute do not receive any of this aid. And this just furthers the fires of insurrection and rebellion that the people are having. This frustration with this dictatorship that the U.S. is supporting. So throughout this time, the FSLN is rising and doing guerrilla tactics, doing a lot of work with organizing in the poor neighborhoods of Managua and the bigger cities, but also in the countryside, organizing peasants, explaining to them their vision of a new country. And through various acts, hijacking the National Palace, hijacking some airplanes, getting a lot of notoriety, they become very popular with the people. And towards the late 70s, everyone can kind of see the writing on the wall except Somoza. The private industries, the unions, the schools, everybody joins in national strikes in solidarity with the Sandinistas, the FSLN, and in 1979, Anastasio Somoza de Baile flees the country on July 17th, and on July 19th, 1979, the Sandinistas take power of the country, beginning a new wave of revolution and leading to the Contra War of the 1980s. Thank you very much.